My dad was an accomplished singer and pianist, but he played by ear. He sang because it was something that he loved to do, but he never had a career of anything, singing. But he just had a wonderful way about him that was very pleasing, very pleasant. It wasn't intimidating for me as a little kid. And from the time I was 5 or 6 years old, I was learning songs that he taught me. My dad said, "Son, let's sing this song." And he said, "How'd you like to learn some more songs? How'd you like to do this with your voice? How would you like to do that?" And that's sort of the way he treated me. Molly and me, baby makes three. We're happy in my blue heaven. Yeah, and then he played the piano quite well, and he would play these wonderful "Going to Kansas City, Kansas City, here I come." And Dad never sang about a whisper. He always whispered his songs. He was that polite, I think. I think it was just a sense of politeness about him, but he was quite good at what he did. And yeah, I learned from him. And every time I hear myself on records, I hear my dad. I heard myself for the first time. She had an old machine that made recordings, and you'd have to gather the residue from the vinyl. And I sounded like a little girl, and I was very disappointed because my heroes at the time were baritone singers, people like Billy Eckstine, Nat King Cole, etc. I was born in Texas in a little town called Gilmer. I don't remember too much about it because my dad took the family I guess I was about 4 when I left Gilmer. And we went to San Francisco, and I started my schooling there. I went to Roosevelt Junior High School. I went to Emerson Grammar School, and then on to George Washington High School. And I went, yes, I did sing. I sang for a year and a half to pay for all my books and my tuition at San Francisco State College. I got odd jobs. But before that, when I was about 12, my dad asked me if, my dad was a good singer, and I learned all of his songs. And then in order to progress a little bit more, he asked me if I'd like to take voice lessons. And so we looked around San Francisco for someone to help me out, and we found a wonderful lady in Oakland. Her name was Connie Cox, and Connie taught me for about 7 years voice lessons free of charge. I would clean her apartment and run errands for her, and she was the angel. She was the one who guided me and said, "This is what I think you can do." My mom and my dad raised 7 of us. I had 6 brothers and sisters. I'm right in the middle, 3 older, 3 younger. I cherished my brothers and sisters. We had a lot of fun together. None of them really got too involved in music. My youngest brother, Michael, was quite enamored with it, and he had a little band and sang and played for quite a while, and then he became ill and wasn't able to play anymore. You know, I think about that now, and I'm amazed because there was never a time that we didn't have what we needed. We weren't poor, we just didn't have any money. My mom and my dad worked as domestic workers for all their lives and supported the family that way. They were fortunate to work for people who were quite well off. So we had a lot of stuff that was given to us. I was, for instance, very fortunate to be taken under the wing by one of their employers. His name was Garfield Werner, and he was on the board of several Southern colleges and offered me scholarships. But unfortunately, I was never able to take advantage of them because I only stayed a year and a half at San Francisco State College before I got an opportunity to make my first recording. Yeah, I loved to talk about my mom and my dad because they were my best friends. We had a wonderful, extraordinary relationship. They were the kindest, most generous people I've ever known. And I don't know how they managed with 7 kids. I just don't know how. The thing that I did sort of inadvertently was I wanted to include them in my life a little bit more. So I made my mom and my dad my fan club presidents. So they would get all this mail from all over the world and sit down into the wee hours of the morning writing in longhand these replies to all these people in, far off lands and what have you. I was 19, and I always wanted to include. They were very inclusive to all of their children. There was no mystery about what they did or about the family. There was no discord. We were all just kind of people who got along together a lot. And I think it's helped me a great deal in my life. We were fortunate because we lived in an area and went to school with a lot of Chinese from Chinatown. San Francisco is, I think, the largest Chinese settlement outside of the Orient. So really we were accustomed to seeing and interacting with people of different races. So we never really had any problems in that respect. Even later on, after I became an entertainer, I did get famous at an early age because of my recordings, and I was so fortunate. I followed people like Lena Horne, Billy Eckstine, Nat King Cole, and icons in the music business when I was growing up. And eventually I got to meet all of them and even become close friends with them. But they're the ones who did all the work for me as far as race relations were concerned. And fortunately, they were all intelligent, bright people who were looking to improve the relationships between black entertainers and white entertainers, and just in general, the public as a whole. So I had good role models to follow, but they were the ones who went to the nightclubs and to the concert halls before me and paved the way. And when I came along, I really was judged by my music and nothing more. I think the thing that motivated me most musically, and that's about all I can think of because my life has been all about music. The rest of the things I've sort of learned along the way, for instance, how to take care of my body physically so that I'll be able to sing when I'm required to. That I learned at an early age because of my athletics in college and high school. So I learned to exercise regularly so that I could be strong physically to support the tones. And I was fascinated from a very early age by opera singers. And they were the ones that I listened to and that my teacher, Connie Cox, played for me ad nauseum. She felt that if I could learn from them the technique of producing the tones properly, not just producing them, but producing them so that I wouldn't do harm to my vocal cords. That was the thing that was important to her, and that was the thing that stood me in good stead all these years. I was a high jumper and a hurdler on the track team. I also played basketball for the 130-pound team at Washington High School. Had wonderful coaches who understood that my first love was music, but I would try to do as best I could in basketball, and I did pretty good. I won several letters, that I still have, which are very dear to me. I was a little bit more athletically inclined as a high jumper, so much so that I got a chance to go to the Olympic trials as a high jumper, which at the time was being held at Berkeley and the University of California. During the same week that I was to go, I got an opportunity to go to New York and make my first recording. So I was 19 years old, and I wanted to go and join my buddies in high jumping and trying out for the Olympic team. But I took one look at my dad, and he just smiled, knowing what we were going to do, and that was to go to New York and make my first recording. Dad was, he was the greatest guy in the world. He would never push. He always offered and made things available for you and opened the door for me. If I wanted to go through, fine. If not, he was prepared to, because there were many opportunities before I made my first recording to leave San Francisco with different jazz bands, and even Louis Armstrong once wanted me to go sing with him on the road. But my father looked at me and said, "I don't think so. I think you should go back to school." But that was about the only time that he put his foot down. He felt that if I went to New York and made a recording and nothing really happened, I could still go back and do my schooling. I think the thing that stands out most in my mind about how excited I was to have an opportunity to do something with my voice is when I met Lenny Hayton, who was married to Lena Horne. And Lena Horne used to come through San Francisco on a regular basis and sing at this wonderful hotel, the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco, in the Venetian Room. And my dad would take me to see her. There was something electric and magnificent about her. First of all, she was gorgeous. She was a beautiful woman. And she had a history of learning her craft. She was a wonderful singer and a dancer as a youngster. And I would go and listen to her and watch her, and she would mesmerize me. And that was the thing that motivated me most, I think, to continue to perform, not just sing for recreational purposes. But I remember she was the shining light. And then of course, I went and saw other people who became, fabulous in my mind also. But she was the one that I remember was the motivator for me. I said, I would love to be able to be that good, have something, a quality that good. And all my life, I told her, I finally got a chance after I met her to tell her. But her husband was very kind to me, Lenny Hayton, because Lena was a little standoffish, because she was a black woman in a white world doing all these incredible things, making roads for people like myself. So Lena was a little bit standoffish, but her husband, Lenny Hayton, who was white, used to sneak me in to her dressing room, and I'd sit out in the foyer until she was all dolled up and made up. She wouldn't see me without her makeup, and put her gown on. And that was the Lena Horne I always remember. I never saw her. I think maybe once I saw her off stage when she wasn't all dolled up. But of course, she was the person, I think, more so than Nat King Cole, who I almost emulated from the time I was a little kid, because he was my favorite singer. But she was this incredible person that I thought was the epitome of what it would be like to be a singing star. There were there were a couple of local television shows that had local talent on, and I was always going on there from the time I was about 12 or 13 years old. And I even have a picture of Billy Eckstine and myself that I saw when I went to Billy Eckstine's house, and he said, "I want to show you something." And this is 20 years later. And he brought out this picture of him and I together. I said, "Where did you get it?" I said, "Oh, I remember these things." I just wonder. I think it was my choice of songs. I sang some pretty sophisticated songs when I was 18 and 19 years old because I grew up in San Francisco and I frequented the jazz clubs, and that's what I heard. I heard songs like Lush Life. You know, here I was a 19-year-old kid singing Lush Life, the most decadent song in the world, and songs that were not necessarily on the hit parade, standard type songs written by some of the writers who wrote for Broadway and what have you, Cole Porter, Irving Berlin, that type of thing. Those were the songs that I sang, and I was fortunate enough to have my audition tape accompaniment by a guy by the name of Vince Guaraldi. Vince Guaraldi wrote the Peanuts music, the cartoon Peanuts. He wrote all that music. In fact, at Christmas time, I sang one of the songs. Christmas time is here, happiness and cheer, fun for all that children call their favorite time of year. And I love it. I got a chance to meet Charles Schulz. And those are the type of songs that I sang. They were not middle of the road. They were pretty esoteric. And George was in charge of jazz music for Columbia Records at the time, and he was looking for jazz singers all over the place. And I kind of fooled him because I hinted at being a jazz singer because those were the ones I was listening to, but I was never a jazz singer. I had to have the melody, and I wasn't good at improvising, but it brought me to his attention. Before I had a chance to leave New York and come back to San Francisco, I was heard by Mitch Miller. Evidently, someone at the building played one of my songs for him. He would never listen to anything jazz orientated. He was quite adamant about the fact that he didn't like jazz and he didn't like anybody who was going to sing jazz. So getting my recording to him was probably a very big stroke of luck. But somehow he heard it and he liked my voice, but he didn't like what I was singing. I was singing songs like Babalu, yeah, in Spanish, but the Spanish was lousy. And I'd sing, and I was accompanied by people like John Lewis of the Modern Jazz Quartet. I had a ball with all these jazz musicians for the first year and a half of my recording career. But nothing really happened to the recordings. Nobody played them, nobody listened to them, I guess. And then I met Mitch, and he gave me a stack of records to listen to and said, "Choose 4." And I chose a song called "When Sunny Gets Blue," a song called "Wonderful, Wonderful," and a song called "It's Not For Me to Say." And we went in the studio and recorded them. And he stood in back of me and patted me on the back while I was singing, which is very difficult to sing if somebody's patting you on the back. And but he got what he wanted, and I just sang the melody. I didn't improvise or try to. I had outlived my Lena Horne impressions and my Nat King Cole impressions and my Billy Eckstine impressions, and he wouldn't have any of that. He wanted me just to sing, so in a way which I thought was wasn't it wasn't exciting enough. It didn't have any fire. I said, anybody can do that. He said, that's it. I want you to sing like anybody can do it, and make sure that everybody thinks that they can sing like that. And I didn't understand what he was saying, but about a year later, we had some success with, I think, Wonderful, Wonderful. Well, I was very fortunate because Columbia Records and CBS television were entwined in those days. So whenever I had a record release on Columbia, they would put me on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I would go nationally to the rest of the world or the rest of the United States singing my song. So that's how I became, immensely popular very, very early on in my career because of the Ed Sullivan Show. It was the most wonderful feeling in the world because I had made a couple of friends growing up who were musicians. One of them was Virgil Gonzalez, and Virgil had a little band, a jazz band, and he would invite me to sing on occasion with the jazz band, and we became really good buddies. And so I was happy for him. Also, I was overjoyed for my dad. But that was part of the circumstances that I was involved in at the time. And I knew I had made the records, and I knew that they were good records, but I was amazed that they would become popular. I thought just, a few people would listen. So I was thrilled for me, but mostly I was thrilled for all of these other people who helped me along the way. And my voice teacher, my goodness, what must she think? Here is this kid that she nurtured from the time I was a little kid. I made a big faux pas because Connie was not only kind to me and gave me voice lessons for free of charge, but she also did it with several other entertainers who became very popular. I can't name them right now, but maybe I'll remember a little later. But she, I don't know, I said something to her when I came back to San Francisco and continued my studies. I said something to her about, I don't know, but it must have sounded a little arrogant or something. And she brought me down to earth and says, I also have other students who are just as good as you. And so I was devastated. She liked the fact that I had success, but she expected it, and she wanted me to be a little more humble, and I thank her for that. It's the most extraordinary thing that ever happened. I am still the child that I was when I was high jumping and hurdling, and I still feel awe and inspired by the people that I first heard sing, and also music has been my life. I've met people like Leontine Price and Beverly Sills and Richard Tucker and Luciano Pavarotti, and those are the voices of of the ages, and yet they embraced me and took me in as one of their own, and it's the most amazing thing that ever happened. I still think I'm dreaming. I never ever had that that epiphany, that moment, because there was always another level, another level, another level. To have a hit record, or to have two, or to have three. But then you go and you see these extraordinary people who have had hit records, and yet you don't get the essence of them until you see them perform. And that was what I thought would be my legacy, is my performance, not only of these songs that I'd recorded, but of many, many songs. And I was never comfortable with the thought that I had reached, a certain pinnacle. I always had room for for my heroes, and they've never let me down. Mostly because I learned early on not to get too close to my heroes, because sometimes the person who has this brilliant voice is not a person that you want to be around all the time. So I learned that at an early age too. My father was a very modest man. My teacher, as I mentioned, knocked me down if you get too arrogant. And most of the inspiration and teachings that I've had over the years were by people, very humble people who are grateful for any success. Because let's face it, you're competing with the world, and to be given an opportunity to do what I've done is in fact a miracle. But it's a miracle that was worked at, and that was I've really and truly been focused. The only time I've gotten out of focus is when I've gotten afraid that I couldn't do what people expected me to do, and that's a little frightening. And then I've done some things that were not productive, nothing earth-shattering, but I got off the track there a couple of times. I worked very hard from the time I was a young kid, because the instances for my services as a singer were just phenomenal, and I got very vocally. I got a little messed up, and I went to a doctor in New York, a very infamous doctor in New York, who gave me amphetamines when I was about 25 years old, I guess. And that was tough to deal with, because I ended up in the hospital and had to go through rehab for that. I met some wonderful people in the hospital who said, "Well, are you taking anything?" Because when I didn't sing, I wouldn't take the medication. I wouldn't take the medication that he gave me. So I would have withdrawals, and I ended up in the hospital. But fortunately, I understood how devastating it was for me, and it took me, I don't know, maybe a month or two to get that out of my life. And then I also went through Alcoholics Anonymous because I thought I was drinking too much, and I thought it was, I was embarrassed. But I had people who loved me and said, "Well, don't be embarrassed, do something about it." I said, "Well, what'll I do?" And they said, "Do this." And they sent me to people who helped me and got me off the booze, and maybe the only things that really could have ruined me. And it was all because of the input of other people. You can't do anything by yourself. Everything is a matter of who you surround yourself with. It was a terrible time for me. But it was I didn't, when you're doing bad things, you just don't know whether you can conquer them or not. And I found out how strong I could be when I was motivated. And I'm kind of proud of that. Once again, I was following my big iconic hero, Lena Horne, Sammy Davis Jr., Billy Eckstine, I think. And then, of course, in the lounges, there were the big bands of Count Basie, Duke Ellington. So I was booked at the Sands Hotel for a month at a time, but I didn't really have a problem because of these people. The only thing I thought was amusing, and then I got a little mad about it after I kind of thought about it, was that I couldn't stay at the hotel. I had to stay at some other place. And I thought, well, I'll take the money and run or something. I don't know. I was a little annoyed later on. But then, of course, I realized how important these entertainers who had gone before were to my life. And fortunately, over the years, as I mentioned, I think before, I had a chance to meet them all. Lena Hornak and Cole, Bill Eckstein, and even Duke Ellington and Count Basie, and all the great black entertainers who had gone before. And I actually sat down and told them how proud I was of them and what they had done and how easy they made it for me. Because not only do they make it easy for me, but the laws of the country changed. They changed the laws, so they would have had to answer to denying me my right to stay at the hotel or stay anywhere I wanted to. I always made sure that I kept the dignity, or tried to keep the dignity that they showed by standing there and singing and not doing too much else, because I didn't know what else to do. But sometimes you can get carried away and I don't know, lose your composure or something. But I was very conscious of that. I said, all I'm going to do is sing. I'll be out of here in a minute. You guys just enjoy. I'll sing my hit songs and then and that's kind of the way I thought about it. But then, of course, the natural kind of intellect that you have comes into being, and I realized that what they were people who were ignorant of the fact that we were all doing the same thing. I mean, come on, just the skin color's a little different. But then you go on television. I said, well, I look white. And my hair isn't nappy. It's straight, And I said, what's the big deal? And then, of course, before I knew it, things got better. I had some goals to get to. As I mentioned, I saw a couple of my icons who I worshipped as an entertainer. At the age of 72, I remember it vividly. I was watching them on Broadway and some productions that they were doing. And I said to them, I must have been about 50 at the time. And I said, when I get to be 72, I would like to perform that well and have my ability still intact. And when I was 72, I remember I took note of where I was, what I was doing, and I said, okay, everything's all right. Now what do I do? I've done sort of the thing that I kind of had my eye on. And I said, I want to see if I can do what I admired about them, and maybe blaze a few trails, and do something at a later age that maybe will inspire someone else. I'm really pretty much a regular person who just got very lucky. I got involved early on in my life with a lot of wonderful people who helped me and guided me, and I found out what I really liked to do, and that was sing, and I had a lot of help to accomplish most of my goals.